bad.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Ricardo Fernandez, also known as Ricky Fernandez, and a great episode for you today. Today, we have the host of the Propaganda Report. He's also a comedian. He's a regular on the Union of the Unwanted. You might know him. His name is Brad Binkley. We had a absolutely amazing conversation. I love these type of shows. I had free time. He had free time. We could keep rolling, keep talking, keep discussing. And the show just took so many different turns, and we shared so many different stories and different aspects of our upbringing and perspectives and life experiences. It really was fun. In certain parts, it even got a bit personal. We got deep into our own life stories. So I know you're going to enjoy this conversation. I know you enjoy these organic, real people having real discussions about real situations and life experiences. We're not having these conversations for clicks. We're not talking about specific issues just to get attention. We're not trying to sell you a narrative. And I know that's why you enjoy the Ripple Effect Podcast. And that's why I'm going to remind you that if you are enjoying the Ripple Effect Podcast, please consider supporting the show. And it doesn't have to be financial. As I always remind you guys, you can rate, review, like, subscribe to us on all the platforms we're on, and that does help the algorithms. But if you are in the holiday spirit and if you're in a good financial situation, please consider supporting the Ripple Effect Podcast by checking out our merch store. We have tons of cool logos. I just released a really cool Theory 6 logo, which is my solo music project. I really love the colors and the design. Then I have a really badass Ripple Effect Podcast logo, this circle logo designed with a bunch of symbols that represent so many of the topics and subjects we discuss on the show. I really recommend you guys checking it out. You can find links to the merch store on our website, rippleeffectpodcast.com. You can also go directly to the merch store by going to the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com. And of course, you can always find all these links in the show description, regardless where you're watching or listening to the show. Other ways of supporting the show is sending a one-time donation via Venmo or PayPal. And you can also support us monthly on Patreon, which I truly appreciate the people who do that. Because unlike a lot of other content creators, I don't put anything behind a paywall. I want my stuff to be open source. I want to get the information out there. I want to get the conversations out there. So everything is out there, and I tell people they can post it and repost it and share wherever they want. So I don't really utilize Patreon to try to make revenue in regards to putting episodes behind a paywall. So my point is, the people who are still supporting me on Patreon, even though I don't give them any exclusive content or whatnot, I do share some exclusive information from time to time. I'll give them updates on upcoming guests. I give them updates on my solo music project called Theory 6, and if I have new songs there, if I've done interviews. So I do give a little bit of exclusive information, but that's not why people are supporting me on Patreon. They're supporting the show on Patreon because they truly enjoy it and they want to give some value to a show that hopefully gives them some value. So thank you so much for people who are supporting us on Patreon. This is a long episode, so I'll keep this intro short, but I do already have some new episodes recorded and they just need to be edited and released. But I have some amazing episodes on the disclosure topic and a few other amazing episodes. So make sure you subscribe to the Ripple Effect Podcast on YouTube, Rumble, iTunes, Spotify, Podcast Addict to make sure you don't miss any of these upcoming amazing episodes. Also, make sure to follow Theory 6 Music on Spotify and wherever else you listen to your music. I have a new EP called Artificial Ripple, which I'm really proud of. And then I got some amazing new tracks that are almost ready for release. So keep a lookout for that. Thanks, and see you on the next one. Peace. What's up, Brad? hear me?
What's up? What's up? Yeah, can you hear me?
I can. I don't see. Oh, there you go.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I always get a little retarded with Zoom.
Yeah.
With the Zoom switch back from StreamYard back and forth. So it always makes my brain go a little stupid sometimes. So sorry if that took me a second to like.
No, it's all right. It's amazing how we get so used to like a program, and then if anything changes whatsoever,
It's just like crazy, dude.
Dude,
or if they're like, hey, we're gonna triple the cost and change nothing.
Is that what StreamYard did?
Yeah, dude. They did. It's unbelievable how expensive StreamYard is now, and they try and update some of the features, like they'll do the we'll chop up your clips like Opus AI does, and we'll give you a bunch of retarded 1-minute vertical clips in the middle of sentences that don't make any fucking sense. You know what I mean? Everybody's trying to leverage the AI.
Well,
sucks.
I mean, I have used it, and for thumbnails, they're amazing. For logos, they're amazing. Opus Clips is pretty good in regards to making clips. They've gotten better. I know somebody. I was talking to somebody about Opus Clips because
Opus is better than StreamYard, definitely.
Yeah, for clips. Well, it's StreamYard, yeah, that's not their focus. It seems like that's just a added feature they're trying to get people to, or like you said, probably trying to justify their cost.
Totally.
Zoom is the thing about Zoom, and it's funny because like back in the day, I still used like Skype, and I remember back in the day I had to use.
Dude, I remember that.
Yeah, I remember Skype. Everybody used Skype. I remember doing shows with James Corbett and Jason Burmis like back in 2013 to 14, using Skype, and they didn't even have the ability to record. So I remember having to use like a third-party software to record my video. I mean, the amount of headaches I went through.
It's crazy, dude. Like I remember when Monica and I, a long time ago, after we got kicked off the radio, started doing this. I spent all this time like learning how to like route audio and do all this shit so we could bring clips in and whatnot. And then like a year later, it's just a simplified program. It's like I wasted all that time for someone else to make it. Of course, it's better when it's simpler, but yeah, it's great. People, I tell all the time, I'm like, people don't realize how hard it is to host a podcast. Guess why most people quit? They see maybe Chris Cuomo pretending to be in his basement or Joy Reid pretending to be in her basement with 18 people behind them. Like they're trying to be like us without actually being. We're doing 7 jobs at one time.
Yeah, it's and sometimes I feel like it gets in the way of my focus because I'm so concerned about, hey, did the audio stop recording? How's the video? It would be nice to be a Joe Rogan or one of these big podcasts where you can kind of just go in a room, you can just focus on the conversation and the discussion. You don't have to worry about any of the technical stuff. It does affect your concentration. And I'm an idiot, so it doesn't take long or much for me to get completely off topic or my brain to scatter. So, sometimes I'll re-listen to and that's where Opus Clips and some of that stuff is actually useful because I do hate listening to myself. So the nice thing about Opus Clips is it does the work for me. I don't have to go through because you almost have to re-listen to the whole podcast again because I remember doing clips before Opus Clips or attempting to do clips. And I remember I'm like 20 minutes into the podcast. I'm like, I don't know. I got to keep listening. Then I find something I like. I'm like, well, what if something better is later in the podcast? And I'm like listening to the whole thing again. I'm like, so I just spend 2 hours to listen to an hour podcast. And
you're getting like 5 minutes out of it to cut clips out of listen to it. Yeah.
And then you upload it to TikTok and then it gets censored and you're like, wow, that was a complete waste of time. It's crazy. The struggle and it sucks because it's a lot of work. That's why I tell people over and over again, I'm like, please support, content creators you like, write a review, like all these little things just to help the algorithms. Cause it's like anything you can do to help, it goes a long way because a lot of us are putting a lot of work and a lot of our own personal time. I mean, a lot of us have full-time jobs. We have kids. We have other things going on in our lives. And it's like just the 1 hour podcast you listen to takes hours and hours and hours of their life.
All fucking day sometimes, man. Yeah. Like some people get on and they'll just talk. But if you want to have like a direction, you're going to spend hours looking at stuff and thinking about stuff. And if you're interviewing somebody, like thinking about them and what you want to talk about, it's Yeah, it's hard work, and it's funny to me how the media tries to mimic that now, but not actually doing it. It's just the picture of somebody handing Joy Reid a coffee when she's trying to pretend to be in her basement. I'm like, nobody's handing me a fucking coffee ever.
Well,
Yeah.
it's also why I think podcasts blew up because I remember episode one, and I think I clipped it and put it on, on social media or YouTube or wherever, my YouTube clip channel. But there was like episode one I did it with my buddy who was my co-host at the time, and he was older than I am, and he was like, he didn't get podcasts. This was like 2013, and he's like, I don't get it. Why would people want to listen to us talk? I'm like, because we're real people having real discussions, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
organic, and we have just personal stories and opinions. And like I would try to tell him, I'm like, the same way you enjoy
Froze up.
going out with your friends and having like a nice dinner where you're, chatting and you're debating and or having a drink with
There you
your
go.
buddies
You're
at the pub.
frozen. As we're talking about the trials and tribulations of podcasting, we experienced one.
Am I frozen? Because you're frozen to me and I'm probably frozen to you. Is that what's going on right now?
That was like a perfectly timed freeze up for the point you were making. you
That,
know?
yeah, that's hilarious because I actually, the whole thing turned off and turned back. Did your Zoom?
No, I stayed in Zoom.
Oh,
Yeah, I saw you frozen for a minute, and it was
oh
recording
my God.
still.
It's,
And I was talking because I knew you were recording still. Yeah,
yeah, because
I was like, Ricky, this is the perfect example of what you're saying right now. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, it's it is wild. But something else that you said that's really interesting is the amount of time we spend learning something that becomes obsolete soon after. It's insane. Like there's so much. Like I'm just thinking about all the skills and all the little things that have evolved that you like you said, you spend all this time trying to perfect something, and the next thing you know, a tool comes out that makes it way easier. And
And do you know what people are doing? Like they're doing podcast consulting. Okay, there's these bullshit artists doing podcast consulting, and I just started looking that up one day, and I wondered, like podcast consulting Atlanta. I was trying to find the ones that had the showed up at the top. Obviously, they're doing good at marketing, and so I started investigating the ones that like have the most reviews, which I think a lot of them are not real, but the prettiest websites and that claim to be getting the most work. And I looked at like their bio and like why you can trust us, why we're the podcast consultants for you. And I would look at like how popular their podcasts were, and I'm like, every one of these motherfuckers whose their rates are like $100 for a 15-minute consult to see what you want. I'm like, oh, really? That's. I mean, I guess that does work with the psychology of it. If you charge people, they think you're going to be worth more. But like all of them have compared to what we get when like if you look at listen notes or you look at downloads or whatever when it comes to audio podcasts, just a fraction. I mean like 1/100. They're all small as shit podcasts. They have like 5 different podcasts. They have none of them have any listeners. The videos have no. It's like when you see a social media marketing company that's got like 18 followers on X, and these companies are just presenting they're going because all these businesses they have a budget and they're being told they have to have a podcast, and so very smart of these people who don't know how to have a podcast, but they know how to go con somebody into thinking that they know how to. They go present that to them, and then I saw one guy who was charging $100 an hour on Odesk, I think it's called, whatever that freelancing site is. Uh, um, and you could see the reviews. He's getting work, and his services are, I will sign you up for I will get your podcast on every single podcasting app. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's really easy, but you're making them think it's difficult. You know what I mean? All you gotta do is sign up, and it pretty much populates in all of them. But you have these people making people think that it's more difficult than it is, and then charging them to do the thing that anybody could do if they took 15 minutes to look into how to do it. Pisses me off.
it kind of reminds me of who's that guy, Tony Robinson, right? He's like
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, he's one of the more popular ones, but there's tons of guys like him that literally their job is to help motivate you to do your job. Like it's just I'm like, okay, what's his skill? His skill. I'm like, so you just need motivation. I'm like, how about more coffee or listen to a song that's more upbeat? Like there's plenty of ways of doing it, but it's like you get these guys who will tell you like you got to go kill it, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. Like they tell you all the things that you're going to go out to do, and then all you have to do is pay them, and that becomes a thing that they're doing. And it's like
Right.
I don't get like what
you
if
feel better about yourself because you've given your money to this person.
Yeah, but if you look at what they've accomplished, so it's like you're supposed to be helping me accomplish this great thing that you're telling me that I'm
Right.
you can help me accomplish, but yet the most interesting and fascinating accomplishment you have is convincing people to give you money to help them accomplish things. It's like and anytime something becomes a market and becomes profitable, like there's just going to be scam artists everywhere, and you see
everywhere, dude.
In podcasting, you see tons of it. Like I get, I'm sure you do too. I get tons of emails about like, oh, I'm a huge fan of the Ripple Effect podcast. We can help, but we feel like you're not utilizing your platform or whatever. We'll get
all
you
the time,
We'll
dude.
get you more clicks. We'll get you more revenue. We'll hook you up with marketers.
Fuck those people,
and
dude.
I'm just, and then
I always reply, I'm like, "What's your favorite episode?"
that's actually a good way.
It's just it's like AI copy pasta shit. It's just
Do you ever get a good answer? Does anybody like a human ever write you back?
they don't ever fucking reply to any of that shit, dude. I mean, the reason I was thinking about that was because I met a couple people who were doctors who started talking about their podcast to me, and I was just kind of like, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's like. This is a friend of mine's friend, and he showed me like his podcast studio at his doctor's office, and I'm like, this guy's a doctor, but he clearly wants to be a podcaster. Like he wants to be like a doctor influencer or something. And so I like looked him up, and I'm like, this guy, he doesn't know somebody's helping him who doesn't know what he's doing. And he has tons of money to spend, clearly, because he's built this little tiny studio. I'm like, you spent more in this little tiny closet room to do your 100 podcast plan you told me about than I've ever spent on equipment in my life. Like, I wish I had every piece of equipment you fucking rich doctor had. And you don't know what you're doing, like just to do the podcast wise, because he's like paying somebody who told him to get the nice equipment, but didn't tell him like what he was supposed to do. And so I started looking into it. I was like, how could somebody like this, I guess when you don't know anything about it and you look up something or you ask a friend and the first person you find is, yeah, no, I've been doing a podcast. And someone who presents himself with enough authority, like Tony Robbins, is something everybody can learn from him, I guess, just starts talking like they know what the fuck they're doing. And when the other person doesn't know shit about it, someone who knows a little bit more but still not shit sounds like an expert and gets paid a lot of money from someone willing to spend it. And that's what started, like, I'm just like, man, that guy, I could actually fucking help this guy is what I was thinking. And I'm like, I started like, how much you spending on this? I was asking him, and he told me, and I was like, I wasn't trying to, I was just gathering information about it, but like, it just kind of opened my mind to like all these people with lots of money who think they're supposed to have a podcast, paying people who have never gotten more than 500 downloads on any one episode of anything to help them, and people like us actually can help them. You know what I mean?
And there's so many examples of similar situations in life. Like I've seen it, like, so I play sports. I've seen it where in sports, I've seen the kid who shows up with brand new Jordans and he has all the, like the headband and the sleeve and all that stuff. And he sucks. Like he wants to be a basketball player, but he doesn't want to put in the work and discipline and his passion. Like he likes the idea of being a baller. He doesn't want to get in there and grind and do all the things that make you a good basketball player. You don't
want to get those loose balls, those 50-50 balls.
Exactly. You know, and it's same thing with like music, right? Like you get the musicians who like their parents have a lot of money. They build them a studio and they have all the best equipment, but they suck or they have no passion. They have no creativity. And and then you look at like, some of the best musicians out there are people who had like a shitty, like a Nirvana, right? He played what was it, a right-handed guitar, lefty, upside down or something like that. And it's like he didn't have money for like nice shit, but he had a passion. Like he was doing it for the right reasons. He wasn't doing it because he was trying to get famous or he wanted to be a celebrity or whatever. He did it because he just loved the art. He loved and podcasting is no different. Like there's the people get into it because they want to be an influencer, right? They just want to be basically like a online celebrity. And then there's people who get into it because they just love, challenging ideas, learning new ideas, getting to talk to fascinating people, getting to share fascinating conversations with people, and having some type of impact in that regards. And so those people are, that you see it in all aspects of life. In music, like the ones who get into music because they love music or they have a story or a internal, whatever situation that they're dealing with that they want to get out. Like a lot of times you use music to be your therapy. Like those are
right.
people,
Yeah, it's like stand-up comedy for me. So yeah.
Yes,
totally.
yeah, very similar. So it's like comedians, same thing, right? Like the ones who get into it because they love the art, like they're the ones who are going to last. Those are the ones who are going to be around 20 years from now. And then the ones who get into it because they don't want a real job, or they get into it because because they won't like being the center of attention, and they don't really care about the art. Like they're the ones who don't last, or the ones who don't even
they're not even paying attention. They're just thinking about their own shit, and it's really a plague on society. This mentality right now, this idea of we can just find these different ways to be an influencer, that has caused it's caused this idea of, well, the best way to do that is to find a way to go viral by positioning myself as a victim of something. That's the fastest way to it. It sucks for actual victims of things. You know what I mean? Because it's gotten so consistent where the model is, I'm going to go viral on this platform or that platform if I'm called this ism, or some slur is thrown at me, or I'm rejected from something, or I make it seem like someone assaulted me in some way. It's never like, let me see if I can go viral by just expressing my genuine thoughts and beliefs, and no nuance ever went viral. There's nobody going, how can I be more nuanced and think critically so I can go viral?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I think as we get more artificial, the organic will be even sought out more. I think for a while,
so.
the artificial, or it wasn't artificial, it was more like just the, I guess it was artificial, like artificial fake personalities on TV, artificial, opinions on articles. It's like, it's all fake. It's all trying to sell you something. It's all has a narrative that they're trying to push on you. It's all, behind the scenes. There's a reason why, some other motivation of why they're giving you this piece of information, or excluding other pieces of information, or giving you this opinion in this way. And then podcasts came around, right? And podcasts are like, no, this sounds like real people having real discussions. And when we're basically, like you said, plagued with all this bullshit around us, then the organic just sound like we could almost, there's something about the organic that we could relate to. There's something about the organic that felt real and authentic, and we connected with it in a way that you didn't connect with the fake. And I think you'll see it with like art and music and all these things. I've started using AI to create like music because for the longest time, with just the limited time I have in my life with like the kids
okay.
Yeah,
your audio cut out a second there.
Oh, sorry.
You're saying you started using AI to create music?
Yeah, to help create music, to kind of I guess not cut corners, but like find a more productive way of. So
it's like a prompt. It's like a creative prompt.
Yeah, I mean it's I had this I just had Rob Dew on yesterday, and we had this discussion about AI. And I think I forget who else I was talking to. Oh, Ryan Christian from The Last American Vagabond. I had a long.
He's great. Ryan's great.
Yeah, and we had a long discussion about. I'm like, okay, so could you make the argument that when software and computers came about, that like the people that were doing it the old-fashioned way of like using pens and paper and brushes and paint and actual physical things could look at the graphic designer and say, hey, that's not real because you're not drawing that circle, you're not drawing that triangle, you're not drawing that texture, you're just using the these tools in the software to do it. So I guess it's like, what it's going to get blurry, the line's going to get blurry on like what's actually something that it's man-made and came from our imagination, and what came from what had too much influence of the computer or software or AI, that it's not authentic anymore. But I think, and I was telling Ryan about this, I'm like, when you look at music or really anything, any art form, like there's a gap between like what's in your imagination, like the thing that's what's in your head, and then the actual thing you create, right? There's a gap between those two things, like, and then what technology.
If you can hear me, you're definitely frozen.
No, I can hear you. You can't hear me. This is so weird.
CIA, dude.
It's funny. I was telling Rob Dew, I'm like, if I wasn't on the list before you, I'm on the list now. I'm like,
it's just oh yeah, that's cool. You're talking to Rob Dew. I like Rob. Are we? So this is are we? All of this we're recording for the show, right?
Yeah. Well, at least I'm trying to. Whatever Zoom's doing to our call,
no,
I don't know.
I love your style, by the way. Just like talking and just like feeling off what's real. I think it's great. Like I love that. Actually, I've always liked that about you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, it's the people. It's funny because people would always say like I'm the Joe Rogan of like alternative media, because obviously for a long time he didn't go really hard in the paint on a lot of these topics, and but we had a lot of crossover with guests and friends and whatnot, and
paved the way for him, kind of, and in some topics.
I will take that. I don't know if it's true, but I will take it.
I think it is. I mean, I think that I remember the first Union of the Unwanted. I was on it with you guys, and it was, I remember Corbett was on it. You were there. Sam was there. Charlie was there. A bunch of great people there.
Ben Swan was there. Luke from We Are
Swan
Change
was there, with the great hair. Still got the great hair. Ben Swan does. But that was the type of thing that other people aren't comfortable talking about things until we do it for them first. And of course they make all the money off of it. But at least we pave the way for them to financial riches.
Yeah, well, that's something we've been talking a lot about on the Union of the Unwanted, because there's a divide in the alternative media community about, like we had Clint Russell on Monday, and I've been sending you emails. Have you been getting the Union of the Unwanted?
I just realized that you had been sending them to. I don't check the propaganda report emails as frequently as mine, and I did see the one that you guys sent yesterday, but I saw it after you guys had started, so I didn't jump in. But I'll jump into Union of the Unwanted anytime. I love the show, and I will check my email better to make sure.
No, that's my fault, because sometimes I have like Mel K's another one. Mel K. There's quite a few people that have like multiple emails, and like some they've abandoned. So sometimes I'll email the wrong email, and then I'll get a text message or whatever during the show, like, hey, are you doing a union tonight? And I'm like, hey, I sent you the email. And they're like, oh, I didn't get it. And I'm like, oh,
I actually just saw your email from the propaganda report to the propaganda report email before the show. I saw the one that Charlie had sent one yesterday, but I saw it like right after about an hour after you guys started. So I was like, I'm not gonna jump in and mess up the rhythm. But I love doing that show, and it's fun. It's a great lineup.
Yeah, well, it's fun because we don't know who's going to show up. I always tell sometimes people will say, hey, like who's joining us, and I'm like, I have no idea. I'm like, I always overbook because I like the craziness of like, I didn't know. I remember what was it, like a month ago,
Adam Curry showed up, dude. One of the ones I was on, and I was just like, we're talking about sound and being able to do 8 jobs at once. There's the master of that shit right there, dude.
Yeah, Adam Curry. We've had G. Edward Griffin on. We've had Del Bigtree on. We've had we did an episode with Roseanne Barr. But It's
Yeah,
fun at just having people like just jump because the idea is like, hey, it's a hangout, right? And just like a real hangout, like people you invited that you thought weren't going to show up. People that you invited that said they're going to show up, forget to show up. Like it's just it's a real hangout, and we really don't know who's gonna show up, and that's kind of what makes it fun is the randomness of it, and people can, we always give people the freedom to say, hey, you want to jump in for 5 minutes, you want to jump in for 2 hours, you want to jump in for whatever, you want to say a little, you want to say a lot, like feel free. It really is just like a fun little round table discussion, like
it connects people too.
Yeah, like a lot of people have done great networking because of it, which is kind of awesome because it's like our little way of contributing to the community, because it's like we all get a lot of help from other people. I always go out of my way to like try to help out people if I can. Like, hey, if I can connect you with this person, I will. If I can help you out if you're having this technical issue, or I know this guy who can help out. And it's helped me. Like sometimes people are like, how do you get these people on? And when I had John Stockton, it's like a funny story because people are like, how'd you get John Stockton on? How'd you get Jim Brewer on? How'd you get this person on? How'd you get?
Wait, the basketball player?
Yeah. And
yeah, John's. You mentioned basketball. I love basketball. They call me White Lightning at LA Fitness because the drugs I bring, not the on court play, but I do. I love basketball. So you had John Stockton on. That's awesome.
It's funny. So I had this guy Boki Nakbar on back in the day. I'm a big basketball guy, like basketball and soccer. I eat, breathe basketball and soccer. I coach both sports. I'm on like the board of a local soccer club. I got asked to be on just because I'm so proactive and I've coached everything. Like I literally before this podcast, I was like putting together a team for a one-day tournament that's coming up, and for my daughter and my son, and like I sign my kids up for everything. Awesome. I coach everything. I'm like, I want to be involved. I want to compete. I love the whole excitement of the ups and downs and the like developing kids and being a part of their lives. And like that's one great. Of my favorite quotes is like, a good coach can change a game, a great coach can change a life. Like I never take that for granted.
Absolutely, man.
And
I remember my great coaches like growing, like I have very fond memories of them and stuff. They're absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's a very important thing to remember as adults sometimes, is that as kids we all have those interactions, that adult that like took the time to like talk to you, connect with you, listen, give you advice. And to that adult, like it might have just been one of many conversations they've had with you, but for some reason it stuck with you. And that adult has no knowledge or understanding of how much of an impact that conversation, was in your life and whatnot. And like, I never take for granted that I could be that adult for some kid.
Dude, that's such a great point. When we're kids, so, according to neuroscience, anyway, I always thought this was interesting. As we get older, you know how things move faster. They seem to move slower when we're kids. It's because we don't have all of the default settings in our brain yet when we're kids. And we're experiencing everything for the first time emotionally. And these emotional memories and experiences that create them is what makes it feel like time slows down. And as we get older and we fall into these patterns of doing the same thing every day, then every day becomes the same. And so we're not having the same emotional impact on our brains, the experiential impacts on our brains. So it makes time just fucking fly by because we're sleepwalking through the same thing. And I read, I like reading like medical journals and psychological studies, and 'cause I think it's interesting the things that they find. Not that all of them are 100% accurate ever, but this one always stuck with me, which was that if you want to slow down time as you get older, you have to remember when you were a kid, it slowed down because of the new experiences that really had an impact on you. Made it slow down. You have to do something every day that creates that experience of something new and emotional. And that's something we are in control of. So whether it's you go walk your dog at a new park, or you decide to fucking talk in a British accent all day when you go shop, whatever, just something just different, then that will create a specific memory of that day that will literally make it feel like time is slowing down.
That's interesting. Yeah, that is really interesting. I mean, we should always try to get out of patterns and rhythm, right? Because we get in these like rhythms of, I always say, like going on vacation, or um I don't know, having a drink with friends at a random new restaurant, and just whatever you can do that gets out of your pattern, or listening to. I forget who I was talking to about this recently too, like about how, like, if you listen to the same podcast, you watch the same YouTube channels over and over again, like, and I'm just using them as an example, but like if I listen to No Agenda every week, and that's the primary source of my podcast and information consumption, or James Corbett, or the High Wire, whatever it may be. Like, I'm gonna get tons of great information, but after a while, it's like I'm kind of adapting to their way of thinking, and I've kind of
Yeah.
start looking at things the way they look at things, and I love when I find somebody who has a completely different outlook, right? So it's like I have my go-tos. Those are some of my go-tos for like shows and content. And then I'm always in search of like, who's that content creator? Who's that podcaster? Who's that YouTuber? Who's that thinker, that philosopher, that author who has a completely different outlook on things, has a completely different perspective on things. Like, I was, you might know who she is, but Elizabeth Lane. She's Eastern
I've heard the
European.
name.
She's from Georgia, the country, not the
Yeah,
not the
yeah.
state. But she has a very interesting take on a lot of the Russian Revolution. Like, I was listening to an interview with her, and she had this completely different perspective on Stalin and all, just
Yeah.
the revolution,
Interesting.
and all these political, historical people from Eastern Europe. And I'm like, oh, I love this, because I'm like, I've never heard this specific opinion
Yeah.
on Stalin or whatever.
That's
And
interesting.
yeah, and so I think we need to do that. We need to, I remember when I had Michael Millerman, who I talk about him a lot, because he super one of the most fascinating guests I've ever had on. But
Because it was different and it had an emotion, had an impact on you.
yeah,
Just like the first Union of the Unwanted had an emotional impact on me that I specifically remember it.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, it had an impact on me. I was scared shitless. I'm like, I've never been in on a call with this many people that I look up to and I respect, and it was a little nerve wracking, but it was but yeah, like Michael Millerman wrote, he translated Alexander Dugin, the professor and philosopher from Eastern Europe, from Russia. They call him a Putin's brain, because he has a huge influence on Putin. But he was one of the most
Yeah.
banned philosophers ever. But so I naturally, I'm like, the
Of
more
course.
banned and censored he is, the more I'm intrigued with his thinking. And he had all these just really interesting perspectives on modernity and all these things. And I'm like, oh, this is fascinating. I'm like, oh, this is a different take than I've been listening to. And so I think that's
Yeah.
so important, to have your ideas challenged, and seek out those people who really
Absolutely.
challenge the way you look at things.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I've done a lot of theater in my life. I worked in theater for many, many years, improv, comedy theater, and you meet some interesting people. But being in that environment, well, you got to be careful. But there's going to be some swindlers, just like in any other environment. But I always kind of embrace the idea of like, let's talk to the people who everybody else calls weird. I'm weird. I want to hear the weird shit, because that's what you learn about people. You learn about the different perspectives, and right now, I think that's like super important to hear a new perspective on the Russian Revolution, because everything we hear right now sounds like an NPC. It's just everywhere on every side to me. It just sounds like collective talking points being spewed at an enemy group, or what's been portrayed to them as an enemy group. And social media has made it so difficult to have conversations that are nuanced, and to be like, I don't like this about this side, and I don't like this about that side. I dislike things about both sides, and I like things about both sides, but because those conversations get cut off with, it's like the matrix of just anti Semite 7K chill, anti Semite, or whatever. And it's just like, you see people who are creative, who create that impression of newness when you meet them, or just because they have these different takes, falling into the same trap of collective divide and conquer warfare. I know I took that on a different angle. I didn't mean to, but that's just like what you said spoke to me, because I have lately felt really kind of just bummed out about a lot of the discourse going on social media, which is where the primary discourse that we experience is much different, by the way, than real life. People are much more radical online than they are in real life, but they want to manifest that reality. I think the people pulling the strings, the powers that be, whoever they may be. But I get no satisfaction when I get on X anymore, and all I see is this side fighting against this side saying the same shit they said yesterday. And I'm just like, your dislike of each other is causing both of you to ignore arguments that have no evidence behind them. Not to say that there aren't things that do, but it's just the winning has become more important than evidence and truth, in my opinion, and it bums me out.
No, you're right, and I think that's the big thing about ever planting your flag in any ideology or team. It ends up forcing you to have to defend that ideology or team.
Absolutely.
And in many cases, people don't have they can't put their ego aside. They're not comfortable enough to say, hey, you know what, like, maybe I'm wrong on this, and I love meeting people that, that prove that I'm wrong, because that means that I'm a little bit closer to being right and understanding the situation. I was actually looking 100%. For, because there's a great documentary about Germany, World War II, but from the Germans' perspective. And it kind of, instead of demonizing the Germans during that time, which, just about every documentary does, it does the opposite, which was kind of unique. It showed the perspective of, and not the Nazis, but specifically the rest of Germany, like the civilians that, didn't want to be in the war, the farmers who got raped and killed, by everybody else. So it's like, it was kind of just showing the perspective of like, hey, this was during a time that you could do whatever you wanted to the Germans because they were the evil.
Totally.
They were demonized. So like if the Soviets or whoever was raping and killing villagers, like nobody cared. Because so it was just like a interesting...
Right, because you can fucking demonize them and they're the bad guy and it justifies everything. It's like this atrocity propaganda loop. Edward Bernays, and so he talks about this, him and all these other elitist propagandists and books they read 100 years ago that they didn't expect people to read. And Edward Bernays would brag about it because he lived to be like 100 almost. And he was...
Sigmund Freud's nephew.
Freud's nephew, absolutely. And his nephew is one of the guys who founded Netflix. One of the two guys. I can't remember which one. Rudolph, I think was his name. But they would like, one of the quotes in Bernays' book, Public Opinion, I believe was the book, or Public Relations. Public Opinion is Walter Lippmann. But in his book, and it's on page 75, I don't have it with me, but I quote it so often because I'm just trying to illustrate that how that they are willing to use atrocity propaganda to deceive people because no one wants to question, let me see the burning dead baby. No one wants to be that person, and they can exploit that. Not to say that doesn't happen, but he quotes like saying, when World War II came around, the American public, or approaching World War II, they had gone delirious about our atrocity stories that many of them fell for. And he just mocks the fact that they use these atrocity stories in World War I. The Bryce Report, World War I, is what convinced the world that Germany was a bad guy in World War I. That was proven. Well, I don't want to say none of the stuff that was alleged in it could be proven. The witnesses, nobody could find them. The stories many of them turned out to be made up, and it was all designed to make the world go against Germany in World War I. Not World War II, but World War I. And it was strangely kind of revealed through files from the Russians and some other countries and then bragged about by these propagandists. So I guess once it was out, they were like, yeah, no. Because Bernays was very much like, yeah, very proud of how he can manipulate people. Like, that's one thing about him. He thought it was a good thing. He thought it was very good because I'm smarter than everybody else, so I'm going to manipulate them in this certain way and then brag about it. And if you watch some of his videos when he's old, he's just bragging about the flames of freedom, and he says titillating way too much as an old decrepit man. It's disgusting, but it always puts in your brain once you think about this stuff is that they do this. There's an entire book called Falsehoods in Wartime, written in 1929, that like lays out every like not every single, but like a whole bunch of lies that every country told. And it goes through like every country involved in the war and talks about the bullshit they told their people to support the war that was not true. And when you see that as a standard, now that creates a hashtag Me Too effect where it's like you accuse everybody of something. There's actual real things that happen that don't get the attention, but it makes you question everything. And right now, questioning everything can get you targeted by every single side of things. If your standard is to give them the distrust they have earned, which those in power have done nothing but earn distrust, and then they divide and conquer people emotionally through tribalism, and all of a sudden, people are trusting systems of power that have done nothing to earn their trust, then they turn on you. It's like when you discover somebody who's a con artist, pathological liar, and you try to tell your friends. They're not going to get mad. They're not going to listen to you. They're going to get mad at you, and they're going to defend the person who has worked their way into their life. It's great. It's a book called The Big Con. I encourage everybody to read. It's a fantastic book that was written and published in 1999, and it's about a guy who traveled with his roving bands of con artists back in the like late 1800s, early 1900s. He created much of the dictionary that's associated with con artists that we heard them use with the basketball betting scandals, which was very obvious when you can bet on specific players and shit in the baseball scandal, and the poker shit. But they would go to town. They would pick a mark, a wealthy mark, and they would send a handler to go find that mark who was just very competitive and just wanted to get in on the action. They'd be like, "Hey, we got a game. We got a game. You can come get on down here in South Carolina or wherever. You come with me. We'll get you in on that game." And it's always an illegal game too. So it's like if they're involved in something illegal, then they wouldn't also be cheating me. It's like kind of that psychology of it. And they would they would get everybody in this room. They would lease a building, an office, and they would turn it into a horse racing venue. They'd make it identical to like a horse racing place. And everybody in the room who's there, who's acting, is part of the con. And they would get the police in the town, and they would get the politicians in the town. We got a big mark coming into town. We created this fake venue, this horse racing venue. Literally every person in power in the town is in on it. And every person in there who looks like they're gambling is a con artist. And they bring this wealthy person to make them think they're doing real gambling on horse racing, making them think that they win. And then ultimately they lose everything, but they don't reveal the con because they're going to go pass this wealthy person off to the next roving gang of con artists. And it's the craziest book, especially when you apply that to what government is. To systems of power right now. If that's what they would do back then 100 years ago, what the hell would the people who want to be in government, who wants to be in government, would do now?
Yeah, it's without a doubt. And I think that when you go down these rabbit holes, you realize that nothing is out of the realm of possibility. And, even like on the Union of the Unwanted Monday, we were, there was a little bit of debate with Pasta was on there, and there's a little debate about, what the left thinks and what the right thinks and whatever. And it's like so many times right. I feel like, just pumping the brakes and be like, listen, they're all pedophiles. They're all crooks. They're all liars. They're all like, who cares what the left or right? It's all a illusion, and I get it. Like, there's still people who kind of relate and connect with, certain ideologies or whatnot, and you can't help but defend that a little bit. But when you zoom out and you just look at what they're capable of and what they've gotten caught doing, like Rogan just had Theo Vaughn on today, and he was talking about when Tim Dillon brought up the Franklin scandal on his podcast, and I'm thinking like, Rogan, I remember when he brought up the Franklin scandal, I was surprised that Rogan never heard of it. I'm like, this is
Yeah, I
like,
know. Isn't that crazy?
yeah, I mean, the conspiracy of silence, that you can still find that documentary all over the place. Nick Bryant has been on the show a bunch. I don't know if he's ever been on the Union, but he's been on the Ripple Effect podcast multiple times, doing great work on Epstein and many others. Before there were household names, and of course you can't forget Whitney Webb and whatnot. But Nick Bryant was one of the first people I really, who really highlighted how big of an issue this really was. But so when you look at just how sick the elite are, they don't care about ideologies. They don't care about any of these things, and they're capable of all of it. I mean, even like the Charlie Kirk assassination, one thing we know for certain is that we're being lied to. Now, who's lying to us and who's covering it up? The government's covering it up. The feds are covering it up. Everybody's covering it up. Okay.
Right. It's all fucked up.
Yeah.
It's all crazy.
Yeah. So it's like, literally there was a content creator, a debater, whatever you want to call him, a influencer that got assassinated in broad daylight. Okay. A bloody assassination that his kids and his wife and everybody close to him had to see, because it was going viral. I mean,
it's awful. And people kept saying, zoom in, slow it down, look at this. And I'm like, you're psychologically torturing yourself when you do that.
Basically. And yet it was covered up. And if it wasn't for like Candace Owens and probably a few other people, this story would have been forgotten already. We would have just mourned the loss and moved on. And, but my point is like, these things they're all psyops. They're all, the fact that people can go through or see something that is so obvious more than meets the eye and more than what the mainstream narrative is, and still move on with their lives and not be upset that, if they're lying to you about this, why aren't they lying to you about other things? COVID, you could go down the list of 9/11, COVID, all the things that, vaccines, all the things that are now coming to the surface for the normies that like, hey, maybe we're lied to about this. It's like, maybe you're lied to about everything. And maybe we should look at the world as anybody in power is guilty until proven innocent, not innocent until proven guilty.
And that to me is like the principle. It's not a black pill. To me, it's freeing. It's freeing to realize that this psychological structure that makes people think through the education system that they have to stay in line and follow these orders and check these boxes in order to be worth anything. They have to achieve these things outside of them, and nothing inside of them is worth anything. And meanwhile, their children, because they don't intend on following the rules, or they're being trained to organize these people who are being trained to fall in line. And it makes people emotionally, psychologically feel like they must do what this structure tells them, otherwise they are nothing. But once you understand that that barrier is an illusion, that you can actually do shit beyond that, then personally for me, I find it to be freeing. Well, I first experienced this like years ago. I taught improv and stand-up comedy, and people who wanted to do it were very funny and very much had capability to do well at it. We're terrified of doing it because it didn't fall into that structure. Because, well, no, I could never do this because I'm like, what is the fuck? None of that fucking shit is real. That's all propaganda to make you feel bad about yourself and like you're incapable. And it's crazy what that can convince us that we cannot even try, based strictly on what we've been fed our entire lives. And that it's a everything is a psyop. The communication machines are close to us. They want close contact. Edward Bernays' wet dream is right now. You can control a mass population, relatively, through the information that you feed them. And that's what's going on right now. And I think if we normalized getting butthurt over disagreements, I think if we made that fake and gay, if we called people who, well, you're fucking mad that we disagree. Well, you're a fag. Like if that were the thing that we fucking just demonized, then people would stop getting butthurt because who the fuck cares if someone doesn't immediately agree with you? Oh, the people that are getting you all emotional about it care. That's it. That's it. And like it's crazy. So like I and you've probably experienced this too. When Biden was president, my friends on the right loved my show. Right? Trump's president, my friends on the right, they think the Muslims are coming, and by God, we got to bomb Iran. It's just like what? I'm trying to stay the same. I'm trying to be as consistent as possible, and the propaganda because they chart people in the books they talk about like the 100 years ago, Laswell, Bernays. The people who are most receptive to the propaganda and the easiest to propagandize are those who think they cannot be propagandized. Those who think they're too smart for it. So those are they laughed at those fucking people. And right now, it's just the thing with Candace. So Candace, I ask every fucking question. Candace has revealed things that I absolutely love, but she's also done things like insinuate that people in the town that are regular citizens might be guilty of something. And that, to me, I had a problem with that. And I never once said I didn't know who fuck Josh Hammer was until a few weeks ago. But as soon as I discovered him, like, what a douchebag. I've obviously never trust Kash Patel. Fuck all them. But by simply the reason I pointed out is because I followed the Idaho 4 case. The Idaho 4 case, there was a TikToker who said it came to her in a dream that a professor at the University of Idaho killed those 4 students. And millions and millions of views. That teacher who was not even in town, there was no documentation that she had ever met any of the students, was harassed. There was people who went to her house. She had to get security out there. And it led to a defamation case that is still ongoing that the judge just ruled. And the case is going to start in 2026 that the TikToker, who probably made a good bit of money off of her accusations against this teacher, is you can pursue punitive damages against her. And so I'm pointing this out from the perspective of just be careful because they're going to come after you. And they're doing this to Elijah now. I've been talking for weeks saying they're going to use, whether it's what Candace is the media conspiratorial conversation going on about Charlie Kirk. They're going to use that to start going after people for defamation by implication. And that's exactly what they've done to Elijah. Because Elijah's in Florida. Defamation by implication is something you can pursue in Florida and New York and other states. I guarantee it will follow if they need to. They could have gone after somebody for saying directly that Kash Patel, the cross-eyed Indian, you can't see what's right in front of him, who's a great country music singer. You want to hide something from Kash Patel, put it right in front of him. They'll never see it. They're going after people or Elijah for the implication when they could find people who just said it directly. And to me, that signals that they want to further apply that type of either fear or lawfare towards people to where even jokes you might be able to go after. Because if they'll go after somebody for insinuating with a picture and a post that someone might be a Mossad agent or a honeypot, then they'll go after people for saying that someone's a 7K Israel shill. Like it opens the door for fucking everything. And that's why I scream to the rooftops about evidentiary standards and stuff. Like as conspiracy theorists, we have to be more on point and better than everyone else because they are targeting us with every little mistake and they're looking for a reason to shut us up. And Candace, who reveals things that are evidence that should be considered absolutely, and she keeps the focus on that, she then does things that are like, oh man, like that's going to make us look bad because that's something that they will latch onto, and even if we don't like it, they will use that. Uh, um, I personally, Candace has become the face of conspiracy theorists. I don't like that because I don't agree with everything that she says, and I don't want to be classified and stereotyped just like any other group. And I know that that's exactly what they want. They identity politics people into certain groups so they can then, as we mentioned, treat everybody like the worst. I'm not saying she's the worst of the group. She actually does a lot of great work. But you understand what I'm saying in that they just look for fucking reasons to fuck us over. And it's happened to us before, dude. I got kicked off. Me and Monica got kicked off of WSP Radio a long time ago. It partly because of reporting on Jeffrey Epstein on WSB Radio, and then it was bought by Leon Black, the parent company, Comcast Media, and then we're gone like 2 weeks later. Like I talked to the lawyer in 2016. There was a couple. I know Derek Prose talked to him, and I think a couple other people talked to him. I was going through those documents. I was going through stuff that today still nobody focuses on, that are the real Epstein documents that they want hidden, and I think this other pile of shit they put out is going to cover up. And it's a constant distraction, and with social media, a weaponization of the collective energies of people's desire for the truth that they use against us. I don't know if any of that made sense. It did in my head.
No, well, I mean, it does make sense. And I do have a problem sometimes with Candace using, like, it. Sometimes she seems, I shouldn't say sometimes, most of the time she seems very sincere about her motivations. But then sometimes she'll use serious topics, and she'll use a title for the podcast or a thumbnail, or, she'll say things that seem a little clickbaity, and I'm just like, I'm like, it is a little concerning, but maybe she understands that, hey, this is how I play the game. Like, I have real motivations. I actually want to expose something or someone. And if I play the game of like trying to get this algorithm to, to be favorable to my show, then be it. Then I'll play the game and I'll do that. Because there are people who study just YouTube, there's tons of books on it. There's tons of videos on like, hey, how do you hit the algorithm? How do you... Because if you get a little lucky, or if you understand, like Ian Carroll is kind of the same thing. Like he blew up on TikTok. Like I don't think there was a whole lot of conspiratorial stuff on TikTok at the time. He was doing it. It started getting a lot of young kids' attention, and they were probably on a platform that didn't have a lot of conspiratorial stuff. It was a good timing, right place, right time. Yep. All of a sudden, the algorithm started kind of suggesting his videos, and he blew up. And that does happen. I know a guy who locally, I remember we were talking about my podcast, and then he seemed interested, and I'm like, yeah, follow me on Instagram. I'm like, I post stuff from time to time, and then he follows me on Instagram, and I go on his page, and he has like 100,000 followers or something like that, or 200,000 followers, something ridiculous, and I'm just I'm like, dude, why do you have 200,000 followers? And he's like, oh, I do these little videos where I teach you how to do like a soccer skill, right? And it's just like he'll do this thing where he'll do like step one, and then he'll do this little, then step two, then step three, and he'll show you how to, and that's it. That's literally all he does. And it's just this little, and I'm like, okay, but I'm like, there's a lot of those online. He's like, yeah, I don't understand what happened. He's like, I was just posting from time to time. Yeah. He's like, and then out of nowhere, he's like, all of a sudden a video starts going viral, and he's like, and I start getting all these followers and messages and all this stuff, and I'm like, really? And I'm trying to understand like what he did, because as a content creator, you're like, hey, if there's a way to hack the system, I'm like, I want to know it. And
absolutely.
And and then he's like, he's telling me, he's like, it just completely happened organically. He didn't do anything. He didn't know a trick or whatever. He was just doing what he did, and because it's non-confrontational, non-controversial content, he has the luxury of sometimes the algorithm picking your content to be the thing that is suggested. And unfortunately, people like you and I will never have that luxury. But yeah, that does
absolutely.
No, I mean, it's funny because like speaking of Candace Owens, a book that she talks about a lot is The Assault on Truth, right? And she talks about that book a lot, about Sigmund Freud and how he hid
Hmm.
the fact that, like, basically people in his community and the elites were molesting these children. He came up with this whole bullshit theory about how it was all in their head. And so he was talking to these children and telling the parents that, like, hey, what they're saying is all in their head. It's in their imagination. It's not real, even though he knew. And so what Candace Owens, I don't know if Candace Owens knows this, but the author of that book is still alive. And he worked at
Really?
yeah, I had him. I've had him on my podcast. That's how I know.
Yeah.
And and
It's
he was
crazy.
he worked at the archives with Sigmund Freud's daughter, and his story goes like, hey, he finds out about this unpublished Freud work, and he ends up asking his daughter, like, hey, can I publish this? Can I write about this, because it would basically show that your dad in his heart knew that something was wrong, and he knew that, like, these children were being honest or whatnot, and kind of, he was kind of, I guess, probably it was more public pressure to say the opposite, and he ends up releasing this that ends up ruining his whole career, writing the book, The Salt and Truth, because it was he got, basically his career got assaulted just for basically revealing the truth on Sigmund Freud, and he ends up basically changing his whole career path from, like, writing about psychology to writing about animals and pets, and writing about, it's because he's just like, I wanted to get away from this. He's like, I was demonized.
Yeah.
He's like, everybody in my community hated me because I was basically telling a negative truth about, and telling a negative story that shines a
Yeah.
negative light on somebody that's been glorified
It's an
for so.
inconvenient truth to their narrative.
Exactly, and but I have that podcast, but because I'm still, even though I got my
It's
YouTube channel back,
interesting.
I'm still shadow banned. I'm not, no, the algorithm's never gonna suggest, and I'm always curious. I'm like, I wonder if that podcast is gonna, like, eventually, like, randomly get, like, all these views, because it's something that Candace talks a lot
Right.
about, and I'm one of the few people that interviewed the author, and yet, like, it doesn't, and I'm like, okay, so I'm never gonna have, like I was saying, like, we're never, even if we do great work, even if we do something that's interesting, and we
It's
put something of value into the universe, due to the nature of the beast, which is
right.
control, 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 nothing happens organically. And if it
Yeah.
happens organically, it has to be completely safe, right? It's safe content. But
Absolutely.
anything that pushes back against any narrative or goes against the grain, you're never going to have that luxury of being
Dude.
able to.
Right. And we paved the way. Like we said, we paved the way for other people to say stuff that we said years ago, earlier, which is necessary. And especially through COVID, I think a lot of us, I get messages still of people they're grateful for uh, the COVID period when people felt isolated in their views and whatnot, and they found us, they found you, and they found a community. But it's the algorithm will it'll put the type of stuff that we talk about forward when it is beneficial for the algorithm. I think, I think just it's just like propagandists. There's this misconception about propagandists in that they always lie. They don't always lie. In fact, they usually tell truths, oftentimes out of context, but they have to tell truths in order to prepare their target audience to uncritically accept the deception and the lie. And that's why the identity politics and the tribalism is so effective, because it gets people saying, I hate this group, therefore I think everything they say is going to be a lie. I like my group, therefore I'm going to just kind of go with everything that my group says. When the person who is sent to deceive us is not the person who you're already inclined to distrust. It's the one who you are most likely to trust uncritically. Edward Bernays lays this entire model out. You send influencers, it's not called influencers back then, but you send people to be spokespersons of certain groups, and they identify with that. It's like a Stacey Abrams with a black community in Atlanta. It's an AOC in the Bronx that they target her with, and or Trump and hit, it's I like Trump personally, which is why I make sure that I criticize things that he say more than I would criticize a Kamala, because I already am going to distrust a Kamala. She's not the one. She might be sent to tell me something. She might be sent to say something to me that's like that I'm going to disbelieve that's actually true, to get me to disbelieve something that's true. But to get me to believe something that's untrue, it's going to come from somebody who I more identify with, that I think is funny, like Trump. So that's who I need to be focused on, which makes us have to like embrace cognitive dissonance, because confirmation bias feels so fucking good. And they rely on and they exploit that shit. And it's interesting. It all goes. Freud was kind of just a piece of shit. It almost feels like, you know what I mean? He's just
Yeah.
like a drug addict.
Yeah, and really, he ended up spawning, the godfather of propaganda, or at least he was somewhat influence on Edward Bernays and whatnot. There's an old podcast. I remember I used to be friends with the host. His name was Guy Evans. He was kind of an OG. Kind of started even I think before I started. He had a podcast called "Smells Like Human Spirit," which was like a take on "Smells Like Teen Spirit" and from Nirvana. But he actually interviewed, one of his most fascinating podcasts was he interviewed, I think it was Edward Bernays' daughter. Yeah. And it was one of the few interviews that, I heard with her or saw with her, and or anybody from, his family. And she had a very like interesting take, because I believe if I recall this correctly, like she kind of didn't see the harm that he did, right? And and it was fascinating to hear like her take on him. But he influenced, obviously Noam Chomsky's Manufacturing Consent and all these other things, and really the way we look at marketing. Like I know people who go to school for marketing, and I'm like, hey, Edward Bernays? Are like, yeah, he created my field, and I'm like, yeah, do you know all the other horrible things he did? And they don't know. So they don't, like, he was just kind of painted as a positive light. And as somebody who understands propaganda, also, I feel like you'd give me a fair answer without your own personal beliefs really having a effect on your answer as much as the normal person. Because one thing that on the You Even Want that we've been talking about that has, you get the people that are pro-Trump, and then the people who are anti-Trump, and then unfortunately they're pretty consistent with like everything you talk about. It's like they're either Trump's always wrong or he's always right. There's like hard to find that in between, and I'm an in-betweener because I do believe that in some cases he was not the same as every politician that came before him. I argue that I don't know any other politician that historically has ever openly talked about vaccines, that openly talked about, that would ever, there's so many things that he's done that I think was different. Not to say that I'm not defending everything he does, and I'm not saying he's perfect, and I'm not saying he's the ideal politician. I'm just saying that he is a slight better improvement than the cookie cutter politician we have typically get. And and people also forget that he was one of the first ever, and now it's become kind of mainstream to talk about it, and it's mainstream conversation. But at the time when you had a person running for president who's on video questioning 9/11, questioning vaccines, questioning, like, these things have never been done before. Like at that time, these were fringe topics that only people like Alex Jones, and if you brought up, speaking of like being pigeonholed, like, yeah, if you brought up, any of these topics, people would immediately relate you to Alex Jones. What are you, a conspiracy theorist, like crazy Alex Jones,
exactly.
And kind of like you were saying with Candace or whoever, like people, you agree with them on one or two things. All of a sudden, if they have some bad opinions, they're going to bring up those bad opinions of like, hey, Candace also believes this. Do you believe that? But he was one of the first people to kind of push these fringe topics into the mainstream and reach a bigger audience, which I do think opened the door for the Tucker Carlsons and the others who came after that kind of became more open-minded to these topics. I mean, he also, he brought up Epstein. He brought, and which is again leads to my question that I want to ask you is, I have this theory, and I want your opinion on it. I tend to believe that Mossad, and you look at Epstein like having the picture of Bill Clinton in that, in Monica's dress in his house, right? So which basically is, to me, in my opinion, is like a fuck you to all authority, saying like, I have such power, I have such influence, I am so safe and guarded and protected that I can have one of the most popular presidents of our time, a picture that humiliates him in my room, and every famous celebrity, powerful politician who walks in sees that picture, and it's a mockery of him. And I leave it there to remind everybody that that's the type of fuck you influence I have and power. And so with that said, it makes me think, and there's a lot of other avenues we could go down, but I guess the general statement I'm trying to make is, it seems like Epstein and this whole, and it's not just him, it's a whole blackmail operation that is linked to Mossad. Like, it seems like it wouldn't be hard to believe that if you connect some dots, that the reason why every politician that goes into office goes to Israel, every politician that goes into office, even somebody like Trump, who always likes to be the alpha male in the room, once he's in the same room with Bibi, all of a sudden he like bows to him and kneels to him. Like, it seems like that type of influence that Israel has on our politicians, and the reason that also could explain why somebody like Trump could be so hard in the paint about Epstein and releasing these files and 9/11 and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden gets in the office and he goes a full 360. Dan Bongino made a living off talking about these topics on his radio show. All of a sudden he says there's nothing to see here. Like, the only explanation, because I don't believe that they're all scumbags who lie to us all this time. It's almost easier to believe that what we already know, that Epstein was blackmailing people, was videoing people, what had tapes, had everybody in his pocket, and had just control and basically just in every aspect of politics, celebrity, media, science. He just had influence everywhere, that maybe they are blackmailed, or maybe they're afraid of their lives because of the Charlie Kirk assassination and all the other assassinations that could be linked to foreign governments and foreign intelligence agencies. Do you think that is a probable or a possible theory to explain the 360 with Trump?
Well, based on the way Kash Patel and Dan Bongino looked like they were being held hostage in that interview, it killed himself. That flip on it, I think it's definitely possible that you're going to learn information that you didn't know before. So Trump was president before, so the argument can be made that he was in there before. But what I personally think that presidents are not. I think they're I think they can have influence, but I think the idea is for them to be face jobs for the sentiment of the public at the time, that you can have some come into conflict with that, which might end in an assassination. I definitely think it's true that so there's definitely blackmail. Definitely. Do you remember the story? There was two stories last year. It was put in that weird Semaphore publication. You know what I'm talking about? It's called Semaphore. It was created by a New York Times person and people with connections to China. It's a very like shady publication that tries to come off as like intellectual, but sometimes has interesting stories. There's these two stories about videos that were put briefly on not TikTok. It was what's the other one? What's it called? Snap. On Snap, that showed gay sex acts going on inside the office of a congressperson. Just very briefly, they were removed. And the staffer of one of them, who was apparently in one of those videos, quickly got reassigned and moved away to somewhere else. But when you look into what this person got reassigned to, it was definitely they got promoted. Okay, they didn't get sent. So it came off as okay, we're gonna give you some money if you shut the fuck up and you don't ever put that, like the person who put it online got a promotion and got told to go away. And then the same kind of story happened a little bit after that, and then nobody talked about it. And I'm like, well, those definitely aren't the only two hidden videos in the fucking walls of Congress. I mean, my God, how many cameras does Lindsey Graham have in his wall? This type of compromise, which you're talking about, I was kind of reported on and then just disappeared. And I think that the standard is going to be that if you ever think that you're going to go to Congress or get elected to something and you're going to go to Washington, you're going to be Mr. Smith, you better cover every fucking drink you ever have, and you better take it with you to the bathroom because it will get Bill Cosby. You'll get drugged and you'll wake up with photos. They're not going. They are going to pursue every attempt to try and compromise people that go there. So I think it would take someone with skill, an awareness that this is how it is, and that's difficult to get elected, by the way. You have to kind of play into the dumbness of it to get elected. I think you got to kind of be like somebody who just does the talking points and is like, oh, yeah, I want to do this. And I think if you ask too many questions, they'll fuck you over and you won't ever get elected. And so, yes, absolutely. I think that those in power try to make sure to compromise every single person they can. And I think that there are going to be agents of if there's compromising information on people, it's not just one intel agency that gets that. It's whoever gets it. And I used to talk about this before. If there's actually video and evidence of all kind of shit that's compromising on these people, those people are more useful to someone like Trump or anyone in power outside of prison than they are inside of prison because of the power that they hold. So is it better to expose that from that person's perspective, or is it better to leverage it and blackmail them to achieve your agenda? And it's hard to even bring up subjects like that because of the divide and conquer. People go, you're just sucking Trump's dick. No, I'm not. I'm just telling you what someone who is in that position of power might see as more valuable to them and how they would use it. And absolutely, absolutely, there's compromising shit. And there's compromising Epstein documents that not necessarily compromising. I think they're compromising, but that could be left to people to determine for themselves. There's Epstein files and documents that have been out for 10 years that nobody reads, that they never talk about. It's part of the reason we got kicked off WSB, got my website taken down, that identify specific names of people who should be the first people who are brought in to be subpoenaed if you want to ask about what was really going on with Epstein, that are not brought in. There's a document called, it was a plea negotiation letter that was written by Alan Dershowitz. And this negotiation letter was sent to the prosecution. So I've been doing the Epstein file shit for like 10 years. And like, so when I see people demanding that, like more files, I want more files too. But have you read the 2,000 emails yet? Are you going to actually go through the shit? Are you just going to rely on your influencer to tell you what to believe about it? But how about read through some of the shit before demanding, which we're going to get nothing from that shit. That shit that they passed and the Senate's going to pass it, there's going to be nothing from it because the real shit is already out there. And this plea negotiation letter, in my opinion, is the most damning Epstein file that's been in the public for at least 10 years. It's just not been discoverable by a Google search. You had to find it on the Pacer open search, open court records search. There's like images of parts of it. That it's like a 28-page document. So the part about the Clinton Global Initiative and Epstein being one of the initial creators of it, which showed up on Fox a few years back, which I was talking about in 2016. When my website gets taken down, they talk about it. But the entire document, it lists 5 specifically named people. It's like, here's why you need to give Jeffrey this deal. Okay, even though he's facing potentially life in prison, here's why you need to give him this deal. Look at the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, all of these associates. It came off as a fucking threat. The letter did, and only 5 people who are specifically named in this document that helped him get the deal. Like a month later, the deal was signed. That's the kind of thing you don't want your name on, right? Oh, here's the letter that helped Epstein get that fucking sweetheart deal. Martin Seligman, Martin Novick, Peter Schnack, or Roger Schnack is his name, Lawrence Cross, and Bill Clinton. Those are the 5 specifically named people in that letter who allowed their fucking names to be used in a letter to help him get that deal, which nobody ever talks about that aspect of this fucking letter, that they knew their fucking names were there. 3 of them that we know of, and it can be proven, continued taking money from Epstein after he got out because he funded their entire fucking careers. They tried to do rehab, reputational rehab projects with him through Harvard University, and one of them has never actually been questioned or had any sort of social punishment about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. That's Martin Seligman, who actually did show up in some of these emails in a list. Martin Seligman, all of these 4 guys, by the way, are basically like brainwashing scientists. So it's like, so if that chalkboard that Veritas put out are all explained through the work that these guys do. Like I do a whole thing where I point out the specific projects and the billionaires dinners with the Edge organization, which is the billionaire scientist, where they specifically, you could find every single relevance to that chalkboard in the scientific government-funded projects as these people did. But Martin Seligman is right now considered the #1 cognitive behavioral scientist in the world. He's like 82 years old. He first became well known in the 60s at UPenn when MK Ultra research was going on around that same period of time, when he did the learned helplessness experiments, where he tortured a bunch of dogs. It's one of the most widely considered unethical experiments of all time in every list you'll ever see. He tortured dogs into not leaving their cages, even though they knew they were going to be tortured again because they had learned helplessness and that nothing they could do could change their outcome. He then posited that this could be applied to humans. Fast forward to after 9/11, the CIA goes to Martin Seligman. And the CIA learns about how his learned helplessness theory works. And then they take that framework that he used to torture dogs and to learn helplessness, and they use it as the basis of the black site post 9/11 torture program. The interrogation program was based on this Martin Seligman, who in a court document, it's acknowledged that he funded Epstein's projects, or Epstein funded his projects, and that he was close associates with him. And then there's like one document I found from like 2010 of this guy bragging about his friendship with Epstein. Nothing afterwards. And then fast forward, and this was in the court document to get him the deal. Right after Epstein gets the deal, about a year later, Martin Seligman, CIA torture guy, learned helplessness, he gets a $30 million no-bid contract from the military to conduct psychological experiments on the Army that at the time was widely considered against the Nuremberg Code, because the soldiers were not aware that there was an experiment that was going on with them. And they gave it to him as no bid because he was the only one the government said they could do it. Many people speculate that it was because of the work that he did before, and they were rewarding him from his, learned helplessness applied to the torture program stuff. I don't know the truth of that, but he had a long-standing relationship with the government. And this experiment that he did was called a psychological resiliency experiment. And he would basically train these soldiers into putting their own beliefs behind the beliefs of the collective and going to run into a fire when it comes to war, getting them to not question their authority and fight a war, overcome the psychological resilience of killing, and do what their authorities say. It's everything a government would want in soldiers. Brainwashing them is what his peers called it. And they call it, what the crazy thing is, they called him Dr. Happy. They called this fucking guy Dr. Happy because he called it positive psychology. And it was brainwashing them into getting themselves killed without thinking. And this guy inspired his learned helplessness experiments, the manifesto of Ted Kaczynski, according to Ted Kaczynski himself, who while in prison wrote about how the learned helplessness experiments, how the people of the U.S. are the dogs in his experiment. The guy who wrote the foreword to this guy's book, Martin Seligman, died. One of these guys. He's another doctor from Sydney who was learning over at the University of Sydney. We sent our MK Ultra guy over there. And at the same time that, I can't remember the guy's name, this doctor was learning about MK Ultra. He was inspired by Martin Seligman. He goes over in 2014. He dies in Singapore in mysterious circumstances, while at the same time he was being accused in Sydney, Australia, of doing the same type of experiments that Seligman did on dogs, except on children. And his name was Anthony Kidman, Nicole Kidman's father. This was Nicole Kidman's father who wrote the foreword to Martin Seligman's book, who Epstein funded the project of in 2003, who used to brag about his friendship of, that the government has had a long-standing relationship. They've given over $100 million for him to psychologically brainwash people in the Army. And then you move forward right now as the number one psychologist in the brain, cognitive, brain psychologist of the elites. They're doing an AI experiment to copy his brain onto a computer so that they can still benefit from his knowledge when he's dead, because he's 82 years old. Meanwhile, he still works at UPenn, and he is still right now conducting a DOJ-funded world happiness experiment where they are collecting social media, linguistic terms, and just the way people communicate for the purpose of creating psychological resiliency scores for every individual so they can figure out who the problems are. So the higher your psychological resiliency, the more you fall in line. The lower, the more of a problem you are, and policy can be created around getting rid of the problem. And that is a man who helped Epstein get that deal, who has never once been questioned about his relationship with Epstein, because he's still getting government-funded projects, and because he is effectively the head of the U.S. brainwashing industrial complex. You can't expose him without exposing the government, so you will never hear the real Epstein files.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot of information. Yeah,
I know, it's a ton. I vomited on you.
No, it's good. It's good. I mean, those are my favorite podcasts, when people who are listening and myself get to learn something. Yeah, well, you're 100% right. That's the reason why we have to be skeptical of the Epstein files, because he was involved and linked to so many powerful people. So due to that, when there's a lot of powerful people who could get exposed, that means that they're not going to bring the whole system down. They're not going to.
No way.
You're not going to get cops to expose other corrupt cops, right? It's always a story of like they protect themselves, right? And it's a brotherhood, and I can see why that psychological, pattern happens, where like even if somebody you love or somebody you know is doing something wrong, you can't help but want to protect them, and that's the case. And with the elite, it's not because they love one another. They're trying to do something moral. They're trying to protect themselves, because they know that, like, hey, if little by little, if the truth gets out that like all these freaking people at the highest levels are all sick fucks, then they all get the whole thing just crumbles. The whole facade,
mutually assured destruction.
Yeah, exactly, and the illusion gets shattered. And right now we look at the elite, we look at the people on TV, and it's like, yeah, I like this person, I like that politician. Oh, they seem like a good person, or they seem like it's like, when the truth is behind closed doors, is they're all sick fucks. They all don't care. I mean, at the end of the day, to get at the highest levels, and not in all cases, because I think there are, people always say like, oh, you're chosen. You're not, you don't win a election. You get picked to win an election by the elite. They let you in, or they help you win, or whatever. And I think there's probably examples of that. But there's also examples of people who fall through the cracks, like a Ron Paul, right? Ron Paul was on stage with plenty of fake ass, politicians that were taking lobbyist money and were part of secret societies and secret groups and having secret meetings and had secret agendas. but he's for the, I mean, unless something comes out later, in life, which I don't think will, but he seems to be a pretty organic person who truly had values and
I think so.
personal opinions and perspectives, all based on just that's what he thought was right, and it wasn't based on anything else. And so you do get people like that who fall through the cracks. I mean, even Trump himself, people forget. Like now, everybody says he's just one of the many shitty politicians that exist, but not even the shitty politicians, neither on the left or right, wanted him to win or wanted him to run or even took him seriously. I mean, the right jumped on the train because they realized they couldn't stop it. It was more like, hey, if I want
to tried to co-opt,
yeah, exactly. If I want a job, let me go from talking shit about Trump and saying that he's a mockery to politics to saying that he's great and he's this and he's that because I want a job later. And that's what ended up happening. It wasn't that anybody actually wanted. I mean, even his own party didn't want him there. I mean, they didn't like him. Nobody had his back until eventually. But that was the thing that you saw with like Bernie Sanders at the time, and you saw with Trump. It was that regardless if they were the perfect candidates or not, I think people were they were slowly getting to the point where they're like, hey, I can kind of see these are all like, this is all bullshit and these are all lies and none of this is believable. So let me just back the person that seems radically different, because anybody who's slightly different is probably going to be the same thing and eventually. And let me just see if we can throw a curveball into the whole system and back somebody who just is the furthest thing from the cookie cutter politician like Trump, who a lot of times would say shit that like most politicians would have a team telling them like, you can't say this, you can't say that. He just broke all the rules for the most part, And I mean, one of his presidential debates when he was on stage with Dr. Carson, right?
Ben Carson.
Yeah, Ben Carson, and they were trying to get Trump in a got you moment, and they brought up vaccines like, hey, doctor, like, what do you think of this guy questioning, child vaccination schedule? And then Trump's like, hey, I'm just saying that I think it's too many at too young of age. And he actually made it sound, not conspiratorial and not fringe. He made it sound like a good argument to be made that like maybe we're giving too many vaccines to too young of kids. And even Ben Carson's like, yeah, I think he kind of makes a point. I think vaccines are good, but yeah, I think maybe we could look into maybe giving less vaccines or whatever. And I'm just like, wow, somebody is sparking this conversation on a national platform. And to me, like, and I'm sure many of us, like, that was historic because it's like I've never heard this discussion take place.
It's a normal discussion too.
Exactly.
And that's what, so they try and make things that are like normal seem abnormal. The standard of just like robots, and then Trump, says something like that, and it's like, oh, that actually makes sense. And then the media is like, racist anti-vaxxer, as though it's abnormal. Trying to appeal to people who don't know any better, I guess, who don't ever ask the question, wait, you're telling me this thing is radical and abnormal. Is it radical and abnormal, or is there something to it? Which they don't want people going further to ask those questions because they want to trigger them emotionally to short circuit them away from the truth. And you're 100% right about that. The way that politics, at least in our generation, has operated, changed, and it makes me think of Ma'am Dami, which Ma'am Dami, whose mom is a movie Hollywood director, the dude who was he was a rapper, an up and coming rapper. I can't remember his rap name off the top of my head.
Really?
Yeah, he was an up-and-coming rapper. His mom is a Hollywood movie director. She directed Denzel. He did the musical scores for one of her films. He won an award, like I don't know if it was a Grammy or an Emmy or something for doing the musical scores. And there's articles about him, about his mom. I can't remember her name, but how her son is the up-and-coming Mister, and is like a weird rap name. And that was who he was until like 2019. His dad is like a well-known, elitist, world-renowned intellectual. And I'm like, oh, this is the cave dwelling, turban wearing Muslim. Is this elitist right here? Is he going to continue his rap career? I'd hate to see him give up his passion. But what he did know to do was in that debate where you have, of course, he's going to fucking win, by the way. It's like Cuomo's slogan is like, sometimes it takes a sexual harasser to beat a Muslim gang rapist. I mean, and that might as well have been the fucking slogan that they were trying. Everybody wanted Mandami to win. If you're putting Cuomo up, I might have killed your grandmother and grabbed your daughter's titty, but I ain't brown. You know, like that's what they're fucking doing.
That's why I was kind of surprised when people were like asking the question if he was going to win. Oh, do you think he's going to win? I'm like, of course he's going to win.
Of course he's going to fucking win.
Yeah. I mean, he was saying all the right things for the people that, you know, that
that debate.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? So the debate where they said, are you going to visit? Well, I mean, this is like the most obvious setup. You either have to be the dumbest motherfucker in the world as these other candidates, or it's just a setup to say, are you going to visit Israel or whatever the question was? And this is a New York mayor. And everybody's answer is, I'm going to visit fucking Israel by jerking off into their own face. And then he's like, no, I'm going to care about the people. It's something that Trump might have said in 2016.
You're absolutely. It's
like,
funny you say that you take two extreme political. They come from two completely extreme political ideologies, extremely different, and yet you're right. That's the similarity that they both have, and that's also the similarity I think that got them both the W was the fact that you're appealing to the people who are voting for you.
100%. He gave the best answer. Everybody else is like, and then afterwards they go, oh, Cuomo goes, oh, so to clarify, he's not going to go to Israel. Like anybody's going to go, yeah, to that fucking answer.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's going to, the thing is like New York is a mess, and similar to like the U.S. being a mess and Trump coming and seeming to be America first. You know, he seems to be New York first. And that was kind of the same idea was like, hey, I'm going to take care of the people who voted me in first, or the people who will eventually vote me in first. I take care of them. They're my concern. And that was also what appealed, why Trump was so appealing to so many Americans, was like this idea of like, oh, we finally get a candidate that, you know, Charlie Kirk, same thing. Like, you know, I think people respected the fact, even though it was a short period of time, until he got assassinated. But like people appreciate the fact that like, hey, this dude really is America first, because he gets tons of funding. His company gets tons of funding from Zionists, and yet even he's questioning, you know, if we should be supporting Israel, or if Israel's gone too far, or if October 7th was a complete a false flag event used to justify everything, you know, they did afterwards. And it's just like, you know, which is fascinating, because it's like, okay, like basically after October 7th basically means that because that was horrific, there's literally no line that could be drawn.
It's crazy.
Afterwards, that you know, it's like because of October 7th, like literally you have the green light to do anything as horrific as you want. So, and it's like, it's crazy that to think that similar to like January 6th, where it was like, oh yeah, well, what a surprise there was feds there. Oh, what a surprise that there was, you know, it's like,
yeah, right.
If you just look at, you know, the timelines, it makes perfect sense. Like you got Trump, that they were trying to lock him up, right? They for like tax invasion or whatever it was, for real estate bullshit.
Rico, Fulton County, Georgia.
They banned him off every single social media platform, right? So he's a sitting president who couldn't use Facebook and like Twitter, but yet like Al Qaeda could, right? And he was, you know, so I'm like, so if you look at like, obviously there's some elite, there's some group of people who want to make sure that this dude is not around. And yet, right, when January 6th happens, you think those people weren't going to say, hey, this is a great opportunity to find another avenue to make sure that we, you know, get Trump and make sure he doesn't become the next president, and make sure that he doesn't, you know, run again, and to make sure we lock him up and we whatever. It's like, that's common sense. And
Right.
so it's like, and then when you look at October 7th, same thing. Like, hey, you got Bibi Netanyahu, who's in basically a civil, he's at a break of a civil war in Israel.
He's
like,
not liked over there.
no, he's not liked.
You know?
And a lot of people who were, had their hand on the pulse of Israel politics said that like the country was divided. There's a lot of people who, that did not want him to, there in politics. They want, there's a lot of people wanting him locked up, right? There's that BB Files documentary that goes into, his corrupt history. And James Corbett also did a great short documentary called Meeting Bibi Netanyahu. I forget what it's called, but he just re-released it on YouTube. It's really good. But like, so this guy's a piece of crap. And
totally.
When do countries come together and forget about all the political corruption because now they have a new enemy? It's when domestic terrorism happens, or
fear for your life. Exactly. So every single time, it doesn't matter that he funded their existence through Qatar, like that he was
Hamas. That's been publicly accepted now. Like the fact that I'm like so now it's not a conspiracy theory. Like it's historical fact that he basically was okay with funding Hamas. And you think that same person wouldn't be okay with, and if your end goal is greater, right? Because that's the thing what people have to think about. Like the elites always look at what they're doing as it's for the greater good, right?
50-year, yeah, right.
Yeah, you are sacrificing pawns for the protection of the queen, right? And it's like that, or the king, and it's like, so that's the way.
Transhumanist agenda, king and queen.
Exactly. And so it's like it's one of those things where people, and the thing is, what drives me nuts is like people have a hard time grasping that idea that like, hey, so you're telling me they let September 11th happen and they knew all these people were going to die and all this stuff was going to happen, but they let it happen because of this geopolitical strategy. I'm like, PNAC, right? And like just like before COVID, there was Event 201. I'm like, all this shit is talked about and written down, and Richard Grove talks about it. You talk about it. Like many people talk about. Like it's in the books. Just read some shit, and you'll realize like
they brag about it. It's crazy.
Exactly. They don't even hide it. It's like they publicly talk about their plan. I mean, Schwab writes a book called The Great Reset during the Great Reset, and it's like, what are you talking about, the Great Reset? Like, what are you this was just a virus and we're just trying to help people. Like, motherfucker, they're literally writing a book talking about their strategy, the Fourth Industrial Revolution. They literally put it in a book, their strategy. But because we're so dumb and distracted, and maybe that's what I should call this episode, Dumb and Distracted, that the majority of the people are so dumb and distracted that, like, it took COVID where you paused every aspect of your life for people to even open their minds to the idea that things are being controlled and things. Are you ever watched the Y-Files? Oh, great show. So AJ, I've been trying to get AJ on the show forever. He's awesome. But the Y-Files just came out with a episode on Psyops, the history of Psyops, right? And he gets into like the way you can rate a Psyop, right? Like, so there's like a rating that you go down of like, okay, do they use this? Do they use that? Use it. And if you get a certain rating, like it's guaranteed to be a psyop. And if you don't, and I think
that's great.
What's that researcher and author Hughes? He does a lot of interviews too. His last name's Hughes. I feel like an idiot forgetting his name, but I'm bad with names. But he came up with this whole rating, ranking and rating system for psyops, and it's almost like 100% accurate. But he just did a whole podcast video series. It's really good. It kind of reminds me of remember that conspiratorial video series back in the day called How Stuff Works, and it was stuff they don't want you to know. I had the host on back in the day, Ben Bolin, like way back in the day.
Of what they don't want you to know? Yeah.
And this was before like the show really blew up. I mean, it was funded by how stuff works. I think it was linked to with the Discovery Channel or
Yeah,
Net Geo
yeah.
or
No,
something
it
like
was.
that.
Me and my friend auditioned to be the like face of that
Oh
years
shit.
ago,
Oh
yeah, and we were they were we were going to be the ones that booked it, but then the guys who did it decided they wanted to do it because they were going to be behind the scenes at first, according to what we were told anyway.
yeah, yeah.
And then, yeah,
Well, I don't think they like to be in front of the scenes, for lack of a better term, because even their podcasts, they just do audio. They don't do any video podcasts really on the show because they still continue doing it. It became more podcast focused and less video focused. But at the time, like they would go down these conspiratorial rabbit holes, and they would have like it would be fun little videos I could send to people because they would do some good research and they would highlight
yeah.
some good factual stuff that can get people down that rabbit hole. But the Y Files is kind of like a current time, a present time version of that in regards to like they do tons of like
Yeah.
great stories or whatever. But the one they just released on Psyops was phenomenal. And he's done also a really good one about forbidden cures, about cancer treatments.
Oh, dude,
Yeah,
That's
which,
it's a book about that, the forbidden cures. Like I
but there's
think it's
also
called that actually.
yeah, and there's also a what do you call it? A documentary called Forbidden Cures, which Monica, I didn't know. So speaking of the Union of the Unwanted and some really interesting guests, a lot of times throughout the years of doing podcasts, I've gotten to know some really interesting people and being people that I'm a big fan of. I've gotten to get them on the show. One of the people that I was a big fan of that have done some historical work is Massimo, who did 9/11, the New Pearl Harbor. He did a moon landing documentary. I think it's called Moon Man. I don't know what it was called, but and then he did Forbidden Cures about cancer treatment and all that stuff. And I actually had him on a Union of the Unwanted. And weirdly enough, Monica was on. I didn't think anybody knew who he was, like because people might have ran into his documentaries but didn't know who he was. As a filmmaker, that he's a talent filmmaker. And Monica's immediately like, I love this guy. I know this guy. And I'm like, so
I
that's
think we
like,
interviewed him a long time ago.
you did actually because
I think we might
because
have, yeah,
after
yeah.
that Union of the Unwanted, Monica asked it to hook up with Massimo. She's like, I'm a huge fan. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I'll get you his contact info because not too many people knew of his work, but he did. He's one of those like those OGs, in regards to like the community. Like he did some really really important work. And some people don't even know him by name. They just know his documentaries. Because A New Pearl Harbor was like 9/11 A New Pearl Harbor. I think it was like 6 or 7 hours long. It was like 2 or 5 hours long. It was like super long. And it was one of the best documentaries on the topic. And then also Forbidden Cures, because he goes into all these amazing stories of these real doctors that you can look up once you know their names and once you know their treatments.
Dude, absolutely, man. The forbidden cures thing. My mom had a rare illness she was told she's going to die when they first misdiagnosed it. In 2 years, they said she'd be dead. She lived 18 years. And you learn a lot through that. Watching my dad, and if somebody tells you something, well, we have decided that death is imminent, and it's like, okay, we're going to find another doctor. It's at that point in time, you either accept what you're told there, which it's easy to do because we are learned to believe in the authority of our doctors, but their authority, it only stretches to the limits of their knowledge. And there's lots of knowledge outside of that. And watching my dad and my mom, fight for, we're not going to accept that for many years. I learned a lot. And I got to like researching medical stuff. This is why I like the COVID stuff. I kind of knew right where to go to, and a lot of people did. But like reading the documents and what are they actually testing in the trials? Oh, they're not allowing the old people and the pregnant people to be in the trials because of a risk, and then they're going to roll it out to those very people first. That sounds like the trial's continuing, except so like that kind of shit. But like like reading about the forbidden cures and like royal rife and the exploding of the cancer atoms, and then you take those terms, and back when you could actually research stuff on YouTube, you can still do it a little bit, or Google. You can still do a little bit on Google Scholar. It's still useful. But you put it in quotes and use the search modifiers, and you could find parallel things. Like I remember the royal rife, it looks like a one of those things in biology class that kind of explodes the cancer.
Was he the one that because it's been a long time since I went down these rabbit holes, but was he the one that had to do with vibration or frequency?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes, it's the
which
vibration, the frequency
yes,
vibration, just destroying it.
which
And
makes
like
perfect
seeing that,
sense.
it's crazy. Yeah, it
Well,
totally
it
makes
makes
sense.
because if you sing it, and not to interrupt you, but I just want to give people the visual of how, because it sounds like craziness. Like it sounds like there's no
Yeah,
way vibration or frequency could kill cancer cells. Well, put it this way: like somebody simplified it, and it was really easy to understand in this manner. If I sing the same vibration, right? I hit the same note as a glass, right? I
right.
kill the glass or I shatter the glass, but I everything else is not affected, right? So it's like basically he used the same logic of like if I can find the
Yeah.
frequency or vibration of the cancer cell, I can directly kill that cancer cell, affect that cancer cell without affecting anything else in the body.
That's a great way to describe it. And they kind of silenced him. But then you look at research, at least from 2016, I'm sure it's still right now. I think it was Arizona State. I remember finding it literally describing the exact same thing that Royal Rife did in experiments where they were conducting to try to cure cancer, where they were having success with it. I'm like, this is exactly almost verbatim. You're just redoing what got silenced before, but in an institutional sense. And I'm like, how often has that been done? And there's so many more stories when it comes to there was a doctor, what was his name? There's a book called it's like magnetism and resonance or something like that. A doctor, he was trying to figure out how to regrow limbs in humans, and he just couldn't figure. He was paralleling it to frogs, and he couldn't figure it out. And then one day there was a guy got in a motorcycle accident, came in mangled, and he did something during the surgery, the emergency surgery, where he something clicked with him, and he healed this person in like a record time. And he realized, and he went back and he was testing it with the frogs he was doing, and he discovered, and I can't tell you how to do it, but he discovered the ability to create that process, not like aliens and instant regrowing, but to actually make the healing process faster and the potential of regeneration being there. And then he immediately, because he worked in the military, almost won a Nobel Prize, but he was like a Navy doctor. They fired him immediately, and he got banned to the outskirts. He had to go to Mexico. Like he literally got kicked out of the fucking country, and out of the military for discovering something that I guess that wasn't they weren't ready to have that be public yet.
Well, John Stockton, and I know we talked about him a while ago, but what makes him really interesting is one, he's all-time legend. He was on the dream,
Yeah.
literally on the Olympic Dream Team, the best group of basketball players that ever played together ever.
It's great.
Jordan, Magic, all
Yeah,
those
man.
guys, and then all-time assists, all-time steals, still till this day holds those records. One offensive record, one defensive record, which tells you how great of a player he is. The modest guy I've ever met in my life. I mean, I
White
asked
boy.
yeah. I mean, and people used to talk trash. I remember Gary Payton, like the story about Gary Payton used to try to talk trash to him, and he would just ignore him, and it would piss off Gary Payton. He's like, dude, I'm trying to get under his skin, and he's just ignoring me.
Dude.
And then he'll, but he talked about at Utah when he had this chiropractor that worked for the Utah Jazz, and how he completely changed the way he looked at healing and the human body, and it's basically made him realize like, hey, like the medicine is within, like the body will take care of itself if you just help it do so. And he talked about like an ankle injury, about like instead of icing it and doing all these things like we typically do, he's like, no, like move it and let the blood flow to it and do these things. And then he's like, he had an ankle injury that he had to get help off the court, and then within like a day he was walking on it and playing again on it, which typically he would have to ice it and stay off it for a week or whatever. And he's like, he couldn't believe how quickly he recovered from it when he had a chiropractor that helped him utilize his internal healing and his capability of healing. And just recently I talked about how this podcast called Redacted, it's like this married couple that does the show on YouTube. They're pretty good. They have some interesting.
Seen it,
yeah, and they had a dentist on who kind of was reinforcing what I already kind of believed based on like my history of like understanding the human body and the doctors and people I've talked to. But like basically how the teeth are capable of fixing themselves or regenerating themselves or whatever we're just given the wrong protocols to do so, and everything we're doing is actually harming. Like mouthwash.
Yeah.
Now people are talking about how it's killing all the good bacteria that's required in your mouth, similar to like how your gut requires good and bad bacteria. Same thing with your mouth. It requires, balance, right? And so it's like, yeah, because I always thought, I'm like, why isn't dentistry similar to everything else in the world, where it's like we're sold lies to keep us coming as customers and
Yeah.
keep us needing them and not being able to fix our issues on our own. And so it makes perfect sense. And she had this dentist on talking about this and all the better ways of having good dental health, and all the lies that we've kind of been told. And I think that was the name of the video was like the lies your dentist told you or something like that. But
I
like,
might have watched that video
oh,
actually,
maybe.
because I've been like researching that stuff myself recently about like cavities and stuff, and how like you can how to do it naturally.
Well, I use
It,
charcoal, and there's also like on Union of Don't Want that I was talking about. There's a ingredient that now you're starting to find in toothpaste. It's called like oxy. I forget what it's called, but it's supposed to help your teeth even regenerate. But for years, I didn't use toothpaste. I just used just literally powdered charcoal, and it was like all I
yeah,
used. And I'm like, okay, I feel safer using it because there's no chemicals in it. I know what's in this product. It
yeah,
seems to work, and I don't have any issues. Like it doesn't make my teeth sensitive. It doesn't whatever. I'm like, so why put chemicals in my mouth? And it's similar with everything. Like everything from like we're constantly poisoning ourselves. Like deodorant. Now you see aluminum free deodorant. But how many years and generations of families were buying deodorant that had aluminum, and we're putting it
it's
on our
crazy,
biggest
man.
organ on our body, which is our skin, and getting into our body, and we didn't know that it was doing any harm, right? And this is the problem with America, is that we just have tons of really poisonous things on the market that are safe for us to buy, so it makes us think it's safe for us to consume and use, and it's not the case.
And the food's terrible. The food that we get, because it's all about selling the simplicity of it, the convenience of everything. Just the way they get people to accept having no privacy anymore. It's the same way of accepting unhealthy foods for us, for animals. For your pets, the the food that is most available and in front of you is like the worst food often for them, and which is something I didn't learn until after like feeding a pet that type of food. And then if you have an animal get sick, you start reading about it more, you start learning about it more, and you realize that it's the same thing they do to us. It's just trying to make money off of just
Well,
mass marketing some shit.
look at the ingredients on the animal food, like the pet food. Like you read the ingredients, it's on the front it says like chicken and whatever, and then you look at the ingredients, it's like corn syrup and cornstarch and this flour and
Yeah,
that flour. I'm like, wait, I thought like animal like
is that
dogs.
bad? Yeah.
I'm like, isn't that bad for if it's bad for
It's like
humans?
grapes. I thought
Yeah.
grapes were toxic.
Yeah, and then it's same thing with vaccines. Like when you look at animals and vaccines, like
Yep.
your kids don't need to be vaccinated. I'm not sure your animal needs to be vaccinated. My parents have always they grew up on a farm. I was born in northern Portugal on a farm. My parents are very old school. They never vaccinated any of their animals. So
Yeah.
when we got a pet, I didn't vaccinate my pet. I didn't vaccinate my
Yep.
kids. I'm like, I'm just going to use the same principles for my animals as I do with my kids, and that they don't need poison. Mother Nature has already solved this problem.
Yeah.
We know how to survive, and we've made it this far before, without vaccines and just eating things you could grow, things you could pick, things you could kill, and that's just keep it simple that way. And just about every industry is designed to lie to you to get your money and resources to keep themselves alive and profiting. And so you kind of have to look at everything
Absolutely.
in that light.
And to shame you into making a decision uh, uh, without questioning by making questioning seem bad. Like my dog is not neutered. Uh, I read because I wanted to be as I wanted to learn as much as possible, and I wanted to make sure it's the right decision. And I started reading about it and the health benefits, and because my whole thing was like, uh, I'll just not. I'll try and not let him run around and impregnate dogs. because that seems to be the thing that people worry about the most. And I was like, it feels like our irresponsibility, and of course, dogs can get out. It's not, sometimes you can't help it, but like, I feel like that is a justification that we use to chop their nuts off. And I'm like, sometimes I get out on the loose. Don't chop my nuts. It feels. I understand if you're in an environment where you're trying, but then they'll say, well, you don't want them to get testicular cancer. I was like, well, that logic, we should all be fucking eunuchs if that's the logic, that it's necessary to prevent testicular cancer. But what about the benefits of the testosterone? There's lots of benefits, especially in the first couple of years of their life when they're developing. And neutering too soon, it leads to that's not to say that there's not benefits to doing it to prevent pregnancy and having dog. I understand that, but like the argument before was you need to neuter them right now or you're a bad person. That just like it was like you need to get the shot here. My dad, so my mom died in 2021, due to complications of her. She had an illness for 18 years, a rare illness. And my dad, he had developed an illness when the vaccine came out. And I talked to my parents about it. And I was like, I'm not going to get it. Let's wait as long as possible. But the thing is about my mom had to be in the hospital doing like specific types of treatments, like 4 or 5 days a week. We were going to do like different therapies and to help her improve and regain some of the function that she lost. So to not get vaccinated was to end all of her treatment. So that was a difficult. They had to do it to continue fighting, and so they got it. And on the timeline of side effects that they acknowledged, so my dad developed a cough, which turned out after getting a scan to be a lung scarring and a pulmonary fibrosis. There's another name for it that slips my mind at the moment. But when he started developing that, and we were told that was one of the possible things he might have had, I started looking up in the medical journals what the side effects that they acknowledged, the rare side effects of the COVID vaccine induced side effects, because I knew they were going to be pushing the booster on him. And I wanted to make sure that there wasn't a possibility that the shot caused this and that a booster could, make it worse, because it was already a terminal thing. And I found a literal identical case study that had just been published that was the same age, the same timeline, the same symptoms. I've never seen, it was like they were describing my dad. And I printed that out because we had a doctor's appointment. And I took it and I highlighted it because the recommendation was do not get the booster. It will make this, because it slowly makes it harder and harder to breathe, but you can live a few years if you manage it right and you're good health. And so I wasn't like looking this up to be a conspiracy theorist dickhead to the doctor. I was like wanting to make sure that the treatment was going to be right for my dad. And we get in there and he's talking to my dad about the treatment and he's pushing the booster. And I said, is it possible that this was caused by the vaccine? And he got triggered, this doctor did. And he said, are you vaccinated? And I said, no. And he said, you're going to die. That's what he told me. It was what a grown man who was probably in his late 60s, 70s told me while I was asking a genuine question about a case study in a medical journal that he accepted. This wasn't a fucking rare. This was like a Lancet or whatever. And then I was like, I'm asking, I said the same thing. I'm asking because this, and I want to make sure that it, so that he doesn't get the wrong treatment that makes it worse. And he goes, well, if you have something, I'll look at it. And I said, actually, I do. And I pulled it out of my bag and I had everything highlighted that was relevant. He took it, he looked at it for 2 seconds, he flipped it back at me. He said, you're going to die. And I said, Dad, we're going to go find another doctor. And we went and found another doctor. And this was at Emory. And when we went in there, I said, I know I'm not supposed to ask this. And she said, "Oh, you can ask anything." And I told her this story, and she said, "I've seen that. I've seen what you're describing." Validating my worries about it, and saying, so people have a lot of negative things about COVID, obviously, but like that was like an experience of mine where there was a doctor who was willing to be honest and say, you know what, I'm not going to shame you, versus one who had just shamed. For it was just like, I'm not trying to fuck you. I'm just trying. People get so butthurt when they're, he's probably getting money. He don't want to get fired. I understand the pressure, but like it was refreshing to see someone positive, but it was also just, we should ask fucking questions, and everybody should stop getting butthurt, and everybody be cool, and we can find research on it. Doctors can't. I don't even know why went off this tangent, but like doctors who are practicing can't always be researching, you know. So if if you know somebody at a fucking research hospital, or you want to do some research yourself, and you're looking into it and you find something, bring it to them and ask them, and it should be okay to do that. You shouldn't be shamed. So I think that's what we're talking about, shaming of asking questions, and that's what, wrapping back to what we talked about earlier, is that social media has gotten to the point of where it's like, why do we have to shame for people on just asking questions about certain things, when that's what we all kind of, identify ourselves as people who question shit. I think we should give each other a little bit of a break, even if we disagree with the questions,
No, I agree. I mean, I think that's that problem seems to be even larger with people with PhDs and really prestigious degrees, and it's funny because there's a similar story. Remember those movies, Naked Gun?
I love those movies.
Yeah, so they were some of my favorite movies growing up, and I rewatch them with the kids, and we still laugh over them. And if I have friends over, we're drinking, we like crack up and we're like, hey, let's watch one of the old Naked Guns. And
OJ's hilarious.
Yeah, yeah, he actually is pretty funny. It's but and it's funny, he's actually really likable in those movies too. But he
totally.
And so I had the privilege of talking to Jim Abrams, who actually did those movies, and rest in peace, he actually passed away.
Very cool.
I believe not too long ago. But before he passed away, I had the privilege of having him on the podcast. And the reason I had him on the podcast was, in this, I've told this story multiple times on the show, because I think it is a podcast episode that I did that was really important, and probably didn't get as much attention as it deserved, but it highlighted exactly what you're talking about. This idea of never questioning the expert. The truth is, the expert doesn't spend any time researching. They're still regurgitating old research that they were given at the university 20 years ago, and they're way behind the research. But Jim Abrams had a son called Charlie, and Charlie was born with this issue where he would have these violent seizures, like hundreds of them a day. It put a lot of stress on the family. They constantly had to be around him, look after him, check on him. Even got to the point where it was a sad story. But Jim talks about his older son writing a letter to the parents, talking about how, I forget, I'm gonna misremember exactly what the title of the letter was, but the letter was like, how do I love my brother and hate my brother at the same time, or something like that, because he was dealing with like his brother being the center of attention, even though he's center of attention for the wrong reasons. But as a kid, you're like, mom and dad, and does like all their love and focus and energy is going into my brother. And I can see how that, as a kid, you could end up almost, feeling left out. That, even if though you're left out because you don't have medical issues, as a kid, you don't see it that way, right? You just see it as and so Jim Abrams, his son, has these violent seizures. This is the height of his film career. He's done Naked Gun movies, the Airplane movies. He has access to all the best doctors and hospitals, whatever. He travels all over the place. Yep. It's just more pills and more pills. That's what's recommended. Mm-hmm. He even had a surgery, which, looking back, he now knows that was basically unnecessary. But they tried to have a surgery to try to fix this issue. Well, he's actually at the library looking for other things, researching other things, and he runs into this book about this research that John Hopkins did with the ketogenic diet, and how they were actually curing kids of these seizures with the ketogenic diet. And he's like, oh, this is weird. He's like, the doctor's never once mentioned this to me. So he goes to the doctor
Right.
and he's like, hey, like, what do you think? What's your thoughts on trying this? And then the doctor goes, oh, that's too difficult. And he's like, wait. More difficult than surgery,
Yeah.
prescription drugs, dealing with my son falling on the ground,
Yeah.
having these violent seizures all the time. Like, I think it's worth a try. So
Yeah.
he gives it a try, cures his kid of these seizures overnight, literally overnight.
Yeah.
Ends up starting a foundation called the Charlie Foundation, named after his son Charlie, that looks into homeopathic and metabolic ways of curing disease and health issues. And the moral of the story is the same moral of your story, that just because somebody has a PhD and wearing a white
Right.
lab coat and tells you they're the expert, it doesn't mean they have all the answers. And
Absolutely.
and
And,
and
and so, not to dismiss the answers they have, the way I look at it is they're useful until they're not. Just don't let their authority make you think that all paths are over, and that there's other paths always. And like there, one of the doctor who told my mom that she was going to die after 2 years, even though he didn't know anything about the disease. It was like only 500 known cases of it, and it's called perineoplastic cerebral degeneration. You have Brzezinski cells in our brain, and there's a cancer in your body. Your body attacks the cancer, it kills all the Brzezinski cells, which are the communications from our brains to tell us our move arms. So effectively, you ultimately kind of become like a paraplegic who can still feel pain because you can't control your limbs. It's like and they're saying there's nothing we can do. You're going to die, and it's like, but you just said you don't know anything about it. So who is researching this stuff? And that's what I would recommend to anybody. If you're ever in a predicament like that, where you feel like doom has been, put upon you, there's always somebody researching it. And ask that question. Okay, you say this, but who might be working on the? Who would give me a different answer? Who might be working on that? And then look those people up, or go type in the terms that they give you into like a Google Scholar search, and find the papers that have been published, and do like a kind of a more recent, like 5 year, 1 year window, and find the published papers that are actually researching that, because they're always researching something, the things that people have. And then look every doctor up whose name is on that is published paper. I did this a number of times, and they will respond to you because they want the stuff they're working on to be effective for people. And so they're looking for people that have the issues that they're researching to say, yes, I want to see if I can help you, as opposed to doctors who are kind of set in their ways, not doing research. And you find those people and you look them up and you email them and you tell them your situation. My mom had a tracheotomy tube that there was some weird stuff going on. That the one that had used on her for a few years because of her illness. It made her anatomy kind of her vertebrae in the neck, it morphed to where that wasn't working anymore, and they didn't know what to do. And so I started looking things up until I found a specialist who was working on a personalized tracheotomy tube for babies that had been effective, who was now trying to do the same thing in elderly patients who had a similar thing to mine. And I just contacted him. I found his email addresses. I emailed him. He's at Michigan and Georgia Tech, which was local to us, Georgia Tech. And he got back to me immediately and said, I'll talk to the doctors. I'm willing to help any way I can. And that's like the reality of research doctors who want to fucking figure out a breakthrough. You just have to find them if you're ever up against the wall. And it's like, it sucks to be in a situation like that. It really does. It's very difficult. But don't ever let anybody make you feel like there's no hope, because there is.
No, that's a great way to end our conversation tonight. We could talk for hours longer, and we definitely have to make sure that you come back on in the near future and continue this conversation, because there's so many different avenues we can go down and so many different things that we could go further detail in. But yeah, I mean, sometimes when, the unfortunate thing, sometimes when stuff happens to you in your personal life, it takes those situations to kind of maybe research some things you wouldn't have researched otherwise. And it's unfortunate, but it's, it's some of the, some of the experts on autism are people who their kids have gotten vaccinated and had adverse reactions, right? And it's unfortunate, but they now have become the motivated people who have personal stories to motivate them to try to get this information out there. So, but Brad, so for people who are listening, who I should have had you introduce yourself right in the beginning. You've been on the show before, and I'm sure people know who you are. But typically sometimes if somebody hasn't been on in a while, I'll have them introduce themselves again. But for people listening who want to keep up with your work, anything you have going on, any social media platforms you're on, please promote everything and anything.
I host the Propaganda Report podcast, which is on any podcasting platform. And I do video live usually also, which you can find on youtube.com/Brad Binkley or rumble.com/The Report. Also Rockfen Propaganda Report. And you can find all my links in bio on X at Freedom Act Radio. No feet pics, but all the links. And I do a subscriber only show with Austin Picard and Sam Tripoli called Whatever This Is, which is a fun conspiracy exploration. Those two guys are Austin has like a wealth of knowledge, and Sam is shocked. He says, "Oh my God," all the time, and then he's like I love Sam Tripoli. I have to take a moment to say I love Sam Tripoli, who brought a lot of us together actually. Smart, funny, and he is. Gave me the opportunity to do a show with him and Austin on the patreon.com/propaganda report or propreport.locals.com, where you can get that show. And I love that, guys. I love what you do, and I love Union of the Unwanted. I just it's nice to have people who you feel like you can relate to and talk about stuff without people getting butthurt.
Yeah, no, and like you said, I think for many people during COVID, we were those people for them when they didn't have them in their own personal lives. We helped them mentally stay sane and get through things because we were telling them, hey, I know everybody around you is telling you you're crazy, but you're not crazy. And we believe you. And we know that they're lying. And we know that things don't make sense, even though everybody around you is telling you it does make sense. So, yeah, I think we are keeping a lot of people sane with the work that we do. And it is awesome, the fact that we do have this amazing community of content creators and thinkers and people who aren't afraid to push back and whatnot. So, and Sam's definitely a big part of that. He's he's a big reason why the Union of the Unwanted was created, and he helps get promote all of us. He helps bring a lot of attention to our work and the topics we discuss. So I can't thank him enough for that.
He's funny as shit too. You should see him live. Anybody who hasn't seen him live, he's great. Yeah,
his stand-up's awesome. I mean, anytime he's in Connecticut or anywhere near me, I usually go visit and hang out, and and usually he's with Eddie and XG and all those guys. So it's always a good time. So if you get a chance, I know a lot of people know him as a podcaster. He's the legit stand-up. He's really good.
Totally, dude.
Yeah,
he's a pro, man.
Yeah, and even Eddie Bravo is actually really funny too, and XG's funny too. Like they're all
XG's funny.
Yeah, totally. So, but thank you so much. Well, hey, I'll make sure I email the right email for the next Union.
Yeah, and I'll check early. because I love being on Union. So
totally. Unless it's a holiday or something happens where we're all like super busy. It's usually every other Monday. So I think our next one will be December 1st, I believe. So I'll keep you in the loop. I'll make sure that we send out an email and invite to you. And we'll have to reschedule schedule another discussion soon, because obviously we just did a Rogan length podcast, so and I don't even think we scratched the surface. So there's a lot we can discuss.
Awesome.
Hey, thanks, Brad. Thanks for taking so much time out of your busy day to chat, because obviously again, we're all busy and we're adults, so I really appreciate when anybody takes this much time to do a podcast. I really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your night. And we'll stay in touch. And send me those links also to, because I don't think I have the links to yours in Sam's show. So send me that. Anything else you might have, send it over, and I'll make sure to put it in show description.
Awesome. All right, man. Enjoyed it.
Hey, thanks, Brad. Take care.
I believe in the ripple effect.